G'day everyone, my name's Ebony Bennett, I'm Deputy Director at the Australia Institute and welcome to our webinar series. I'm delighted today to be joining you from Ngunnawal and Ngambri country, and I want to pay my respects to elders past and present. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you all to this Australia's Biggest Book Club webinar, and a particularly warm welcome to today's special guest, Bob Brown. G'day, Bob.
G'day, Ebony. I'm talking from Palawa country, and it's great to be in conversation with you.
Likewise, I'm very excited about today and about your magnificent book. I've just got a couple of housekeeping things to get through first. So if you're joining us today, you should be able to type in questions for Bob using our Q&A box. And you should also be able to upvote other people's questions as well. A reminder to please keep things civil and on topic in the chat, or we'll boot you out. And finally, a reminder that this is a live event. It is being recorded, and then the video recording will go up on australiainstitute.org.au as well as on our YouTube channel later this afternoon. So Bob Brown barely needs an introduction. He's an environmental and social justice campaigner, a former senator. He's a founding member of the Wilderness Society. You might remember that in 1978, he led and was part of the successful campaign against the construction of the Franklin River Dam. He served in the Tasmanian Parliament for a decade and was leader of the Australian Greens, where I worked for him for many, many years. And he was elected to the Senate from 1996 until his retirement. His books include Memo for a Saner World and Optimism, and after retiring from the Senate in 2012, he established the Bob Brown Foundation, which is a not-for-profit organisation supporting environmental causes and defending planet Earth. Defiance is his latest book. I've got my copy here. It's absolutely wonderful. It's in all good bookstores, and it's a reflection on half a century of standing up to powerful interests who put profit before the planet. These stories are about how Bob kept fighting as he faced hostile corporate lobbyists, media, and many others that vilified Bob and the Greens and many other defenders of Earth. Bob, congratulations on the book.
Thanks, Ebony. It's been a great ride in the end. I wrote it over a period of time when I could, because I'm very keen to be active on the environment, not just talking about it or writing about it, but I'm very glad it's out there, and Black Ink, the publishers, have been terrific.
Yeah. Well, as I said, it's in all good bookstores, but I believe we've got a video, Sky, if you can just get that one ready. We've got a short video to play first, and then we'll come back to you for some questions about the book. Thanks, Sky.
Hi there, my name's Lisa, and I'm with the Bob Brown Foundation, currently occupying a giant eucalyptus tree in the Styx Valley of southern Lutruwita, Tasmania. This particular forest is situated in the Styx Valley of the Giants. It is world-class, absolutely amazing forest with some of the largest flowering trees left in the world, and this place needs to be preserved. It's a travesty that this forest is still on the chopping block and at the hands of Forestry Tasmania as well as the Tasmanian government. This forest is imminently threatened with logging. We are expecting the machines to roll in any day. So in order to stop that happening and to protect this forest, I've decided to come up and spend a week sitting up here in this forest to highlight this place, to show people what is at stake here, and to hold off the logging, to stop the loggers, Forestry Tasmania, from coming in and destroying this precious place. Native forest logging is one of the biggest driving forces behind the climate crisis that we are currently experiencing, and if we keep destroying these forests, very soon there will be nothing left. These giant trees will cease to exist and will be only a memory. We encourage you to come out and spend some time in these forests before it's too late. Come and stand with us on the front lines, stop the machines from coming in, take action and do something to protect this forest. So please come and join us.
Thanks very much, Sky. Magnificent video there, Bob. And I know a huge amount of your career has been dedicated, and your life dedicated, to saving Tasmania's amazing native forests and others all around the world. But I did want to start in the book with how you got into activism. And in the early pages of the book, you describe how it all started with a chance encounter at the University of Chicago. How did you get into being defiant?
Well, I was in Chicago, but just before I do that, Lisa Searle up in the forest there, she's like I was, a medical general practitioner, and spends half her life in places like Sudan and Haiti and Ukraine with Médecins Sans Frontières, and the other half in preventative medicine, which is up in those trees protecting forests, because we know that that's so important. Nature is so important for the human soul. So Lisa's one of those people who inspires this older generation as she's taken very sensible action for the earth. I was in Chicago in 1974. A friend went over there to University of Chicago, which in 1942 had the world's first nuclear chain reaction take place in a squash court underneath the university, and that led a couple of years later to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the horror of those nuclear explosions. But he was, I suppose it's an ill wind that blows no good. He was studying nuclear medicine and wanted to bring that the latest back to Australia. Anyway, I stayed there at the university. It was fantastic for a couple of weeks. And one morning, snowy November, snow all over the university quadrangle. Here was a group of students sitting at a table, and I went over and asked them what they were doing. And I'd been reading about the Greek generals invading the Athens Polytechnic, sending in tanks, crushing dozens of students to death. Others were arrested for standing up against this right-wing coup in Greece, and feeling hopeless about it. And these students said, oh, well, Henry Kissinger's coming, Secretary of State under Nixon, is coming to town tonight, and we're going to protest outside the hotel. Will you join us? So what could I do? But there I was that night walking around in the snow with about 50 others, having lots of photographs taken. I'm sure they're still wondering who that person over there was. Well, hi, FBI or CIA, it was me. And but it broke the ice. I joined a protest. I came away feeling good that I'd done something, even though it didn't get reported in the Chicago newspapers at the time, and with other good people. So it wasn't so difficult when I came back to Tasmania and found myself joining up with the Lake Pedder campaigners, who failed to save one of the most beautiful lakes on the planet. We'll get that back, by the way. But and then into the Franklin campaign, Ebony, and I run into that so often these days. People saying, "Oh, I can't go out into the forest, but what else can I do?" And of course, I tell them. But I don't know of anybody who joined that Franklin campaign, and there were thousands, who hasn't said, "I'm so glad I did that." Same as I don't know people going out to the Tarkina forest in Tasmania, or the Styx forest, as Lisa was just then, or to help protect swift parrot nesting sites, even who get arrested, who don't say afterwards, "I'm so glad I did that. I feel so much better as a human being, having stood up for the biosphere on this planet for nature, which gives us everything we are and of which we are a part.
Yeah, I wanted to build on that, and I guess it's something we'll return to because it's a huge part of the book. But one of the chapters is called Defying Bad Laws, and obviously you yourself have spent some time in Risdon prison and been arrested a number of times. But you talk about Sally McManus saying that an essential part of democracy is the right for citizens not to support bad laws when she was elected as Secretary of the ACTU. And what a massive backlash there was from the media and others to her talking about that. But I just wanted you to reflect on what kinds of laws are you talking about and what kinds of consequences have you and other defenders of Earth and other defiant activists faced as you defy those kinds of bad laws?
Well, of course, there are bad laws, and there always have been. Christ shouldn't have turned up the businessman's table outside the temple. He paid for that, although we don't see that being advocated by those who now want to lock up environmentalists for peacefully protecting what's left of the environment. But Thoreau famously wrote his book on Walden Pond with an essay on civil disobedience back in the 1840s in America because he didn't want to pay taxes as America invaded and took over parts of Mexico. And Gandhi, the same, spent years in jail because he broke the laws which the British Empire, which Britain was imposing on the indentured people of India, the people who wanted their freedom, and so on. So it's not new. And I quote American presidents who have said when the law is wrong, you have a duty to stand up against it. But we all have to make our own decision on that. And it doesn't pass, it's passingly strange that the biggest attack on Sally McManus, when she said, if the law is wrong, you should not go along with it, was from the Murdoch media, who had just recently been so involved in illegally phone tapping people, including the royal family in Britain. And, you know, it's time and time again, you see laws and traditions being broken by people in power, not least on the right wing. And President Trump's making a gameplay of it. He's breaking constitutional rules and breaking laws all over the place. But it's then okay if they do it. But if somebody who's progressive breaks the law, then they want to come down and send us to jail for such a thing as standing up for nature and defending nature, because the laws are made by parliaments. And I'm a very strong defender of democracy, which, as Churchill said, is the best form of government, warts and all, that has so far been devised. But I go into this in some detail in the book, Ebony. The corporations these days are making the laws to suit them, and they get weeks behind politicians to pass the laws. And the rash of laws around the world to arrest peaceful protesters who are environmentalists is coming out of the corporate sector and being handed. The politicians aren't in Spring Street, Melbourne, or Macquarie Street, Sydney, aren't dreaming up these laws. They're being given it by corporate lobbyists and then going out and passing those laws. And you can see it in the way they're written. So we have laws that are being devised not for the public interest, but for the corporate interest. And why should we not stand up for the public interest, which is protecting nature, and particularly the interest of coming generations, that they should have what's left of nature as part of their experience in life on this brilliant little planet of ours, rather than everything going to destruction by the corporate extractors, by the people who want to make money out of continuing the plunder unnecessarily of what's left of the planetary natural resources.
I want to follow up on that because obviously we've seen here in Australia and around the world, you know, a huge backlash and a crackdown, particularly against environmental activists, and a lot of draconian laws passed, certainly here in Australia, that really seek to criminalise protest, to crack down on environmentalists in particular. And I noticed in the photo section of this book, you've got some wonderful photos in there, absolutely exquisite photos of your place at Ura and in the Tasmanian Wilderness World Heritage Area. But you've also included some photos of injuries that you sustained at the Farmhouse Creek assault, as well as your arrest at a couple of other forest protests. Can you just tell us a little bit about your experiences with law enforcement over the years and what it's like to be arrested and, I guess, put your body on the line, you know, to protect nature?
Well, it can be very scary, of course. There's been a turn down in vigilante activities by, for example, the logging industry, because it realises it doesn't go well with the public. But that Farmhouse Creek raid involved us. I was with the Wilderness Society, but I was a member of Parliament at the time. We got a tip-off overnight. A woman rang anonymously and said, "You're going to be raided in the morning." And I've told all environment groups I'm involved with, if you get a middle of the night tip-off, take it seriously. We did. And 2 busloads of logging vigilantes were brought down by a logging company here in Tasmania. And while 40 police under instructions stood aside with their arms folded, these logging vigilantes beat up and assaulted the environmentalists, myself included, but one of many who were trying to stop the bulldozers crossing Farmhouse Creek into the giant forest on the other side. In what is now, because of that action, the Tasmanian Wilderness World Heritage Area. But those forests would have gone except for that action. And it took, with the police, and one policeman told me he was ashamed that they'd been ordered to stand back and allow the vigilantes to bash us up, basically. And it took Judy Mann, one of my fellow protesters, took action in the civil courts, and one of the logging CEOs was convicted of assault because of that action. But the authorities didn't. And, you know, that was clearly under political pressure. And we see that around the world. And you get to the other extreme. I do talk in the book about the fact that 200 environmentalists were murdered last year around the world. And time again, whether it's in Peru or the Philippines or Moscow, you see the report, the police are investigating the matter, when in fact they're doing nothing of the sort, because they know that there's corporate interests involved there who don't want environmentalists being seen to have been dealt with in a criminal fashion. But we have it easy in Australia, and that's why I like inviting people to take part in the forest actions. And I like saying to people, come down to Tarkina this summer, particularly if Murray Watt gives the go-ahead for a acid waste dump in that cathedral-like rainforest with its rare marsh owls. Come on down, because the Tarkine forests are a most arresting place. And you know, the other side of it is for people who can't do that, they can help fund what environmentalists are doing. And I had a wonderful woman in Hobart just a couple of weeks ago say, "Bob, I don't want to go out there and get arrested, but could I take a bowl of soup out to the people who are?" And I said, "Fantastic, they'd love it." And so there was a little bit of innovation, but something that is going to help along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of talked there about some of the violence that environmental activists face, but I wanted to talk about the powerful interests that in your life you've gone up against in various campaigns, which include plenty of really large corporations. So people might have heard of Adani or guns, or indeed, as you were talking about before, News Corp. And what is it like to go up against such powerful and large corporations and interests?
Well, it's essential because they're running the world, and we need to get back democracy whereby the people are running it. And I must say, in earlier years, I was very daunted by it and very nervous about it, but I'm not anymore. For example, just yesterday, Alistair Allen at our foundation and I met with the world's biggest krill fishing company, which is for Norway down, taking krill out of the mouths of the whales and penguins and seals in Antarctica for no good reason, because we don't need krill, we don't eat it ourselves. It gets fed to the salmon farms, and people who are still buying Atlantic salmon produced out of the industry, manufacturing industry in Tasmania, and I hope you're not, but you should know that that's also taking krill out of the ecosystem in Tasmania. But it was interesting talking with them because they don't really have an answer when you get down to the impact this is having on nature. And I found with, well, for example, guns, and I'll give the example there of John Gay, who wanted a knighthood and who I ran into at a reception for the Queen of the Netherlands, who happened to be in Tasmania, and I was a member of Parliament, and I went and got borrowed a suit and or rented one and went to this reception. And they're a big man, the richest man in Tasmania, the only one who had a Rolls Royce and so on, and arrogant to a fault, turned around and said, "Oh, Bob Brown, I will call you Dr. Brown and you will call me sir." And I said, and he had an entourage around him. And I said to him, "Well, Edmund, I'm going to call you Edmund, you can call me Bob." And with that, he turned and went away. But he ended up, bribing a Labor politician to cross the floor for his business interests, if not to get the last knighthood that was available in Tasmania. And the Labor politician told the police, and he was arrested. That is, Edmund Rouse was arrested and went to jail for 4 years and never got to be a knight or to be called sir. It's extraordinary how shallow the thinking of people who want to exploit the planet and how personalised for personal advantage is, and how lacking in an appreciation of the equality we all have. Basically, we're born the same and we leave this planet the same, and it's what we do in between that's so important, and sharing it and making sure it's better for those who come after us is critical to that, as well as for our fellow creatures. But that seems to be missing from the thinking of too many people who are running the planet at the moment. And that is that coterie of men who are in the most powerful positions in the planet at the moment, as well as so many men and women who are running big corporations without taking into account the debt they're running up for those who are coming after us. And, you look at those figures coming out of places like Exeter University in the UK chapter of actuaries saying that, well, by 2050, we could have a 15 to 25% implosion in the world national product, as well as thousands, if not millions of people killed as a result of the onrush of climate change. And it's just not factored in to the thinking of corporations or to those leaders who think that this is all going to keep going, that you can keep over-exploiting a finite system, and a world in which, because of that over-exploitation, Ebony, just in my lifetime, one single lifetime, 75% of Earth's wildlife has been destroyed, and the rate is increasing. We've just got to stop that and turn it around.
I do apologise if you can hear drilling in the background. Our entire office building is covered in that the cladding that catches on fire, and they're replacing it at the moment. So I'll be on mute because there's drilling in the background, unfortunately, from time to time. I'm here with Bob Brown. We're discussing his latest book, Defiance. It's available in all good bookstores. Bob, before I come back to some of the other environmental fights that you cover in this book, I really love the two chapters where you talk about your mum and your dad and the influence that they had on your life and what they made of your move to Tasmania and all the fights that you're involved in. They sounded very wonderful and supportive, but what did you take away from both their approaches to life in your life and activism?
Well, thanks, Ebony. It is great to talk about them. I must tell you that when Black Ink got my book and they reduced it, the editor was fantastic. I said, up to you. I'm not going to intervene. But you might take out the two chapters about my mother and father. They're a bit self-indulgent, and they left them in. And everybody says, as you just did, that's a good thing. Well, I'm very happy. You know, we're all got our faults and shortcomings, but my mother was an environmentalist, and I think that's important to me when the word wasn't in our vocabulary. And my father was a police constable, later to become a police inspector in New South Wales. But he was a very reasonable character. And he was, for example, always telling young people who got into trouble why they shouldn't do that again. And if they did, next time, he locked them up without doing that the first time up. And I think I allude to the story there. We were at Trunky Creek on the old coaching road from Bathurst to Orange in to Goulburn rather in New South Wales, and he was the single police officer there, and we had a big police yard with bush all around it, and that was very important as background to the upbringing for me and my siblings. But he came home one day and said, oh, I've given a ticket to a man down the street, and we immediately knew something bad had happened. He didn't tell us what it was, but the man leant out of the car window and said, Constable, do you know who I am? And my father said, no. And he said, I'm the Bishop of Bathurst. And my father said, well, Bishop, it's great to know you. Here's your ticket. And he always said, don't think you're better than anybody else, but also don't tug your forelock. Don't back off to big wigs and the powerful and the high and mighty. Stand your ground. And that's echoed with me all the way down the line, because I was a very nervous youngster. And I had a regret in life. It was not having the self-confidence now, then when I was in my 20s, for example, that I have now. But I always encourage that in people, and I think it's very important that we don't see ourselves as greater or lesser mortals than others, but we have a right to stand our ground. I can't, Ebony, I can't hear you.
Sorry. I was saying I really enjoyed those chapters, and thank you for sharing those anecdotes. I really think it's a lovely insight into how you were raised and how that shaped your approach to life. You also mention in the book, and I want to raise it now because it's been an issue very recently, which is the petroglyphs at Murajuga, and you describe them as older than the pyramids, larger than the Louvre, and more resonant with nature than the Bible or the Quran. The Yabarara universe remains in plain sight in the form of the largest and most astonishing ray of rock art on Earth. Could you talk us through the recent decision, in your words, from the Environment Minister Murray Watt, giving Woodside the go-ahead for full speed ahead with what is essentially a carbon bomb in the form of Woodside's gas facility there?
Well, Murray Watt is Albo's pick as Environmental Minister to do the corporate bidding. And we had a letter from him just a couple of weeks ago at our foundation, which now employs 30 environmentalists and is very active in the environmental field, saying that he doesn't have time to see us. But what he did have time to do was to go to Woodside, one of the biggest and most, in terms of nature, rapacious corporations on the planet, and speak with the CEO, then fly over and see the Minister of Mines in Western Australia, and then go to Murajuga, where Woodside wanted a license to continue processing and exporting gas to put as greenhouse gases into the atmosphere for the next 40 years through until 2070. This is very contentious, of course, because climate change, the global warming, is a massive threat to all life on this planet, the overarching human-made threat that we have at the moment. And there's Murray Watt refusing to speak to Raylene Cooper of Save Our Songlines, the Murajuga Aboriginal representative, concerned for that magnificent rock art site with 1 to 2 million rock art drawings, if you like, etchings, going back 40,000 years. It's an astonishing place where, for example, the mega kangaroos, 12 feet high, if you'll excuse my old measurements, we believe were spotted, because here they're extinct now, but here they are in the etchings with spots on them. And the oldest, arguably oldest representation of human beings, human faces on the planet, threatened by acid rain. And of course, it's not hard to get people who'll say, oh no, the threat's minimal, or it's going to be okay. Well, Murray Watt didn't speak to the Aboriginal representative opposing what Woodside's doing, overrode it, ticked off on Woodside, flew to Paris to overturn the concern the World Heritage Authorities had about it, while she and Save Our Songlines were locked out all the way down the line. Now, he's the Minister for Indigenous Heritage and Natural Heritage, who refuses to speak, on the one hand, to the Aboriginal people defending Murajuga, and on the other hand, to us environmentalists here in Tasmania and concerned about forests and wildlife all over this country. But he's talking to the heads of CEOs. And you have to say, this is a very perverse outcome for a Minister for the Environment who won't speak to key parts of his own constituency, but is in there with the environmental plunderers. And by the way, Ebony, we've got our Prime Minister sitting on a report from intelligence agencies, which is apparently terrifying about the coming impact of global warming on Australia, and not sharing it with the people. Now, this is a Labor government and a Labor Prime Minister who talk about transparency, but are making all sorts of moves to make it harder with freedom of information, to get information out of them, and sitting on a report like that, which belongs to every Australian. And why is he doing it? Because the corporations don't want us to face up to our need to make really big changes to the way this planet works, if we're going to have it as a habitable planet, for, let alone a happy planet, which is what we should be doing for the next generation.
We'll go to questions from the audience very soon, but I did also want to talk about the very end of the book, because you write a lot about our brilliant little planet, where you share some of the wonders of the world with readers. And obviously, defense of nature is a key part of your life and your activism, but often, you know, you're really up against it, and often the news is not great. But that thread of wonder and delight with nature is throughout the book, as well as I think a real optimism that things can change and can be different. Is that one of your sources of hope and inspiration, and where you get the energy to continue Defiance?
Oh, absolutely. Going out into nature is just so restorative for human beings. And now we've got Scandinavian doctors being able to prescribe a 15-minute walk in the forest for people who are anxious rather than another pill. And, you know, we all love nature. It's why we give each other real flowers as an act of devotion. Give somebody a bunch of very clever plastic flowers and see what a result you get. Because we are bonded, because we come from nature. And it's so important that we look after it. And so it is, I'm, yes, forever in wonder and awe about this existence on this, as you say, brilliant little planet, which so far as we know is the only one that has life on it, and love and laughter, and the ability now for this single species, which we human beings is, to either make it or break it. And I'm in favour of making it. And I'm afraid the onrush of materialism and growth economics and capitalism, which is really exchanging the planet for money, explaining the nature of the planet for money, is robbing us of that future. And without a future, we don't have hope ourselves. I'm very optimistic. I saw the hopeless days of the Franklin campaign give way when people got to think about it and have a vote on it, to the saving of the Franklin River back there, from completely looking hopeless to a campaign that succeeded because people became involved. And I think the same now. If we had a government in Australia that worked on the fact, for example, that 70% of people want native forests saved and 80% of Labor voters, you know, it'll be very popular. So come on, Albo, and come on, Murray Watt, do the right thing there. End this unnecessary logging of native forests, as New Zealand did in 2002, and save so much of the habitat of so many rare and endangered creatures, and reverse climate change while you're at it. It's a no-brainer. So get out from under the thumb of the logging industry, stop giving taxpayers subsidies to it, and instead give the beauty of those forests to future generations as well as, and the last thing on that, look, anybody who's got kids, take your kids to the beach or to the bush every week. Leave the tablets at home. It's so important for them to be able to feel free and to take part in the wonders of nature, of which we are part. It's a basic level human right, and kids do so much better if they are familiar with nature. They feel free to go into it, and as part of the future of life is living with it and enjoying nature, which gives us everything we've got.
Before we go to questions, I did just want to give you another opportunity. I know protecting, in particular, Tasmania's native forests is always at the heart of everything that you do. Where are they at threat currently in Tasmania? What's at stake down there at the moment?
Well, we've just got the swift parrots back. You know, there was tens of thousands of those when Sydney was set up. They go to the mainland for winter. They come down here to breed in summer. They're now down to 700. Estimates are there'll be 70 by 2030. And they're logging the trees. And I have to make a confession to you, Ebony, you're talking to a criminal, because I've been arrested for standing in defence of those parrots under Tasmanian Liberal and Labor laws, which allow their habitat to be destroyed. And I'm contesting that in the Supreme Court of Tasmania come next March with two other women who were there at the time. But, you know, there's so much at stake here in Tasmania. Tasmanian devils, the world's largest crayfish, those masked owls in the Tarkina forest. And that industry can't survive without taxpayers are subsidising it. So after the last election, Albo came down and gave $200 million more to the logging industry, some of that to plantations, of course, but we've got enough plantations to meet all our needs. We just don't need to be doing it. So it's a winner if the government will only listen to the people on the need for us to save what's left of our native forest. Now, here in Tasmania, I was in Hobart yesterday. Here's a series of log trucks going down the main street on their way through to the wood chip mills or to export as whole logs. It's just a disgusting and unnecessary and economically unwise way for state and federal governments to behaving. Time we got past that, and like New Zealand, protected what's left of our forests for our fellow creatures and of course for the health of this planet.
I'll go now to questions. I've got a couple of questions here from Karen and Robert and a few others. Oh no, sorry, Karen's question's a different one, but Robert and a couple of other people want to know about the campaign to restore Lake Pedder Beach and wondering why you're optimistic on that front.
Well, great question, Robert and others. Lake Pedder was described as the mirror of heaven. It was out there surrounded by the mountains of the Tasmanian wilderness. It had a beach that was 800 metres wide in summer and a couple of kilometres long, as long as the walk from Sydney Harbour Bridge to Railway Square, for those of you in Sydney. And it was unnecessarily flooded with to produce less than 70 megawatts of power. That's a tiny fraction of what a big solar power or renewable energy outfit can produce these days. So it's pretty simple. At the moment, the federal government's putting $100 million of your money, taxpayers' money, into strengthening up a couple of dams which are on an earthquake fault, which help flood Lake Pedder. That money should be going instead into a floating solar system on an adjacent dam, producing as much power. It's as simple as that. But until we get past this idea that mega projects and mega installations must be, and you can't undo them, although 1,000 dams are being dismantled or have been dismantled, some of them much bigger than those holding back Lake Pedder in the United States. And that's happening elsewhere around the world. We just haven't got the mindset right. But it would be a great undertaking for the Albanese government or any other federal government, together with the state government, to recover Lake Pedder, because it was the experts have been down there. The lake is still waiting at its beach, still has the tracks of the last light aircraft that took off from it, and it would be one of the world's great restoration projects, and bringing back that beauty. It'd take a long while, but what a fantastic job creator and science innovator it would be for us to restore Lake Pedder. Christine Milne, former leader of the Greens, heads up the group. If you look at, if you go and look at Lake Pedder restoration, you'll find out about that group, which is working for the restoration of Lake Pedder right now.
The next question I've got is from Karen, who wondered what it was like being in prison for your activism.
Well, I did, after the Franklin campaign, come out of prison one day and go into Parliament the next, Karen, and I can tell you that prison was a far friendlier place. But we're lucky in Australia, again, provided you don't see yourself as anybody as better than anybody else when you go to a place like prison. By the way, I've discovered that people who've been to boarding school have much less trouble taking to prison than people who haven't. But it's a great place to write a book too. You get a huge amount of time on your own, and so with a pencil and pad, it's a great place for writing and reflecting on the planet. We're lucky in Australia. Prison isn't a nice place for many people. Many of the folk who are in prison are illiterate or have drawn the short straw in life for one reason or another, and we should be doing better by them. But there's a lot to learn in there as well, if you're humble enough to see your role as learning, not expressing the hubris that so many people in politics have anyway. And 3 meals a day, a roof over your head, and at least in the Hobart prison, they've changed it now. They had a picture of wilderness painted on the wall.
Something to keep you company.
Yes.
Pale imitation of the real thing, unfortunately. The next question is on current politics, and Karen and a few others have asked about the current changes to the EPBC Act, the environment laws introduced yesterday. The question is, do you believe those laws should go through? And is there anything there that is so bad that it shouldn't be approved? Is the current version of the law better than no change at all?
The current version of the law is better than what Murray Watts brought in, yes. You see, the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act, the EPBC Act, which we have at the moment, which we brought in John Howard's time, and when I was in the Senate, I opposed it in 1999 for the Greens, is full of let out words. The minister may do this and may do that. Now, if we had an environment minister that read it up for the environment instead of down for environmental wreckers, it would be fine. And the problem here is we don't have such a minister, and we haven't had for a long time. A minister, you know, if you're the Minister for Finance or the Treasurer or whatever, you speak up for that constituency. But in Australia, and sadly in too many other places, ministers for the environment are also there to speak up for environmental exploitation, and that needs to change. If we had an environmentalist as Minister for the Environment, I say again, the EPBC Act would be a wonderful protector of the environment. What Murray Watt has done in consultation with the Business Council of Australia and the Mining Industry Council is bring in legislation which is amenable either to the Liberals or the Greens. But I noticed that Sarah Hanson-Young and Larissa Waters, the Greens, have been pointing out that it is effectively hopeless as it stands. It does give ministerial override, for example, on major projects, which means that if there's a big contention between a new industry and vital environmental or Indigenous heritage in Australia, the minister can override it. The corporations want that because they manipulate ministers and the public gets locked out at that stage. And Murray Watt's already been to seek an agreement with the worst performing environmental state government in Australia, that's West Australia, as he hands back powers that the Commonwealth should be levying to the states. And that he's made the first agreement with the worst state as he hopes to move across and devolve environmental powers to the states, whereas the big corporations want that because they can pick off state governments more readily. There's so much and there's no provision for ending native forest logging in there. We're moving towards it, he says. No, they're not. It's not there, and so on. So no, we really need legislation that's going to protect the environment, and this does not do that.
And, you know, Labor governments do have a history, in particular at the federal level, of really going into bat for the environment. The Hawke government in particular was critical in taking the Franklin River Dam to the High Court to eventually win that. Also things like the Daintree, protecting the Daintree forest and Antarctica and things like that. So Labor does have a history of intervening to protect the environment in its past. How do you think this government is shaping up to compare against some of those previous?
Well, this government's whipping on the environment. What the Hawke government did, bless you, and yet again, what the Hawke government did was recognise that there was a huge support for environmental action in the Australian electorate, and nearly 80% of Labor voters at this moment want an end to native forest logging. And here you got the Labor government promoting native forest logging. So it doesn't add up. Hawke and his environment minister at the time could see that this was worth tapping in a democracy where you wanted to start, and they saved the Daintree. They stopped the Franklin Dam. They added to Kakadu National Park, and so much more. But as Graham Richardson, and I'm sure he's watching this, will remember that he said to me, I came up to say, come and protect more of the Tasmanian forest. He said, Bob, I can't hear the crowd roaring. And that's where we all come in. It's so important that we are roaring about the failure of this government to protect the environment. And Ebony, I've got to add here that in the second last weekend of March next year, we've got the next big march for forests around Australia. So I urge people, you can look at the Bob Brown Foundation website and you'll see it, to join that march so that they can hear the crowd roaring to put an end to the destruction of native forests, which we don't need to be keeping going in Australia. But there you are. We've got a government that's compliant with the corporations and it's not listening to the people at the moment. And well, it's up to Labor as to whether they turn that around and whether Murray Watt does get some teeth into the environmental legislation. But if they don't, I think they're going to lose a lot more seats to crossbenchers, including the Greens, at the next election.
The next question is from Michelle, who asks, do you think that society's lack of relationship and connection with nature is at the root cause of our current thinking around nature?
Look, I think there's a component of that, but you can take the person out of the wild, but you can't take the wild out of the person. We all love nature. It's why we like our kids watching Attenborough rather than some horror movie. And it's why we put pictures of nature on our wall instead of pictures of chainsaws or bulldozers. You know, it's not, it just doesn't work with us to wake up to see the plunder of nature in the morning, or to hear the scream of chainsaws rather than to hear hopefully birds singing, or at least something natural going on in our surrounds. But the problem is the capture of democratic governments and autocratic governments by the plunderers of nature, the big corporations, in particular the fossil fuel and logging corporations, which are in there. ABC says there's 780 lobbyists in Canberra. Well, I don't know of a single full-time nature lobbyist. Perhaps they're there. But I can tell you, I do know from my own years as a senator, the lobbies for the mining companies, including Adani and Co. and Woodside, are there all the time. They're pestering, hectoring, getting their way all the time. And we need governments to put an end to that system so that they're listening to the people again. That's what will protect nature. In the meantime, it's a pretty poor outlook that we have in politics, but we are in a democracy, and it's up to us all, by being part of the crowd that roars, by voting against people who want more coal mines or more logging of forests or more plunder of Antarctica, and by supporting those people who are active for the environment, because our kids are the great benefactors from us protecting what's left of nature in our own time.
Scott asks, have you heard about the Rising Tide Protestival? That's a new word to me. I like that. And blockade of Newcastle Coal Port in late November. He said he went last year and it was amazing. You're no stranger to blockades, Bob. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, Ebony, Rising Tide are phenomenal. And that protest is on at the end of November. If you look at Rising Tide website, you get all the details. There's people coming from all over Australia. There'll be thousands there. Just go along and enjoy it. I was in Newcastle with this book just a week or two ago. Well, what a beautiful city is rising there out of the old industrial past. But it's also the world's biggest coal export. It's exporting ruin to this little planet every day. And here's brave, intelligent people saying, well, for a day or two, we'll get in the way of that. And I've got my Rising Tide t-shirt in the cupboard here. I won't be at this year's one, but because I'm celebrating a special anniversary with Partner Paul. But I will be again at next year's Rising Tide in Newcastle. And I urge everybody to think about going to Newcastle, because it's a litmus. How well that Rising Tide protest goes is a litmus test for showing our politicians that this age of fossil fuel destruction of the planet has got to end, and it's their job to put an end to it.
Thank you. This last question is from Wendy, who says she is outraged and ashamed by the current government's climate backsliding, particularly on the LNG extensions. Wendy asks, beyond signing petitions, what practical steps can we take to turn this around, and how do we counter the information about job losses and build genuine support for real climate action?
Well, besides joining those protests where they occur, like the forest protests coming up in March, it is very important that we don't feel like politicians are other people. They're not. They're representatives. And having been there, I can attest to this. They're all just human beings. And so it's important to contact your local members of parliament or senators or state reps and say, look, end coal mining, end gas fracking, end native forest logging, or I won't vote for you. That is a very telling thing to get across to MPs. Also, ask them to go and look at the forests of Tandawangalo in southern New South Wales, or the ongoing forestry there that's threatening the greater gliders, at the native forest clearance, which Murray Watt has stood aside and allowed to happen with koala habitat and so much more in Queensland, where the Gouldian finches are in Darwin that people have been trying to protect from the Defence Department wanting to flatten. Murajuga, everywhere you go, you see that. Look at the massive death and destruction from the tidal wave of algae down the South Australian coast, coming because of coal being exported out of Newcastle, amongst other things. So there's something we can all do about it, and have fun, enjoy. Don't be too hard on yourself. And if you're young, get your certificate, go to parties, have fun along the way. It's very important that we take on this most crucial challenge to life on this planet with good spirit. And as with the Franklin, hopeless as it may look for the planet now, we can turn that around. And in Australia, we're in such a powerful position to do it. And so that's why I've written this book. The next one will be about kindness. That's another important human attribute. But thank you, Ebony, and thanks Australia Institute for the fantastic work that think tank does for our country and for our planet.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Bob Brown. Bob's book is Defiance. It's out now. It's in all good bookstores. Grab yourself a copy. Do yourself a favour. Normally reading about these kinds of things, all the environmental fights, we all see the news and it's depressing. This is the antidote to that. It'll get you motivated and inspired. Thank you so much, and congratulations on the book, Bob. I hope it goes really well. Thank you everyone for coming along today and for your great questions. We had over 700 people register for today's webinar, so there is huge interest and you're not alone out there. Lots of people care about these things. Don't forget to subscribe to the Australia Institute on YouTube and to our podcast, Follow the Money, Dollars and Cents and After America. And don't forget to check out our new website, thepoint.com.au, for all the latest analysis, opinion, fact-checking and explainers. We take public policy and explain it in plain English so that you guys can be informed. And we've got the fabulous Amy Ramikis doing live blog on The Point whenever Parliament sits. So for all the latest on what's happening on the EPBC reforms and other things, make sure you check out The Point next week. She'll be live blogging from Monday. The book again is Defiance by Bob Brown. Thank you again so much for joining us, Bob, and hopefully we'll see everyone on the webinar at the next one. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to keep up to date with all our latest research and work, sign up to our newsletter. Delivered every fortnight, it includes behind-the-scenes updates from Richard Dennis, an exclusive cartoon from Judy Horacek, details for our upcoming events and webinars, as well as explainers, graphs, and not to mention the latest cutting-edge research and analysis from the team here on the key issues that are facing Australia. Click the button on your screen to check it out.